Showcasing local talent, professionals, and everyday people making Salt Lake City what it is today. It's time for another episode of the I Am Salt Lake podcast.
I want to welcome everybody out today to episode 248 of I Am Salt Lake podcast. My name's Chris Hollifield.
And I'm Chrissy Shelley.
We have the anticipated episode. I know a lot of people have been waiting for this episode to be released, Chrissy.
Yeah.
Today on the podcast is the live recording from the Domestic Violence Uncensored panel that took place on Friday, October 14th at the Sorensen Unity Center in Salt Lake City. We do want to thank Amora Freeman from I Am Change for reaching out, asking I Am Salt Lake to be part of this, to host the live panel with her. We also want to thank Radical Hospitality and Brian King for sponsoring the event and helping make the evening possible.
This topic's a little bit different from the traditional I Am Salt Lake episodes that we've done before. So for people who have been longtime listeners, this will be very unique.
Yeah, you know, it was something we weren't sure. I know I wasn't sure, Chrissy.
Yeah.
Should we do this? Does it fit into the typical I Am Salt Lake podcast mode? You know, I know typically we bring people on, we find out their stories, what they're doing to make Salt Lake City what it is. But I think it's so important to know what's going on in your community,
yes,
the people that are being affected in your community.
And we really got to talk to people who are making this part of the community better, who are working to create change. Absolutely.
I mean, we had 4 amazing panelists on this, and we're going to get into that in the live recording here, so I don't want to spend too much time. I just wanted to be quick with this introduction. But like you said, these people are part of the change happening in Salt Lake City.
Right.
If you're new to the podcast, might I suggest go to our website, iamsaltlake.com. This is going to allow you to find out more about us and find out more about the podcast. You can listen to the podcast right there. It's also in iTunes, Stitcher Radio, however you subscribe to podcast. Also connect with us. Please, please, please connect on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever social media you use.
Yeah. Because
we would love to know your thoughts about this episode, how you found us, just anything you have to say.
Yeah, we'd love your feedback on and even older listeners who've been around for a while. Give us feedback on what you think of this type of episode, where it's more community. You
can always go to the podcast episode on our fan page on Facebook. Leave a comment there. Tell us, what do you think of this episode? You know, continue the conversation.
Yes, for sure, because it's a conversation that could go on for a while.
Well, and you'll hear this in this podcast recording. Mm-hmm. There was already talks of a second part.
Yeah, I mean, we ran out of time so easily.
But we do want to thank our podcast sponsors. You know, longtime listeners, you know our sponsors. They are wonderful people. They help I Am Salt Lake. They help us. They help the community. Great people. Oleo Skin and Beard, oleoskin.com. I'm a fan. Chrissy's a fan.
Big fan.
I can't believe it was the last farmer's market of the summer season yesterday.
Yeah, it was bittersweet.
What are we going to do with our Saturdays now that we can't walk over to Pioneer Park and visit Derek and Jennifer from Oleo?
I don't know.
Well, I want to share with the listeners. This is a really, really exciting. Well, I'm excited for this. This is the first annual Sugar House Holiday Market. Oleo's going to be set up there. They're going to have a booth. You can purchase their products right there. It's Wednesday evenings. It's going to be starting November 2nd. So depending on when you're listening to this, it might be next week. It might be a week or something.
Yeah.
So pretty much every Wednesday through December 21st. Derek told me it's not the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, though. So because figured nobody would be coming out. So it's from 4 to 8 p.m. Located 1201 East Wilmington Avenue, which I've been told is right up there by the Spitz and Sugar House. Check it out. I mean, this is a great way to stock up on your Oleo skincare products. your beard oils for all your holiday gift giving. I know Chrissy is going to be giving away a ton of Oleo products for Christmas.
You know it. All my family's getting Oleo.
Yeah, it's like, Mom, I know you don't have a beard, but you're getting the beard oil.
Just try it. See what you think.
Yeah, just tell us what you think of Oleo product. Oleoskin.com is their website. Check it out. Check them out online. Find out more about their products. Who's our other sponsor of the podcast?
Ooh, our other sponsor is Distillery 36.
Great local distillery, Brigham Rum.
These guys make some good rum.
You could pick it up right at any state local liquor stores in the Salt Lake area. I'm sure they're outside here in Utah. I'm not sure exactly.
They also make a great holiday gift,
Hey, I would
bring it to a holiday party.
I would love some Distillery 36.
Me too.
For a holiday gift.
For Christmas.
For Christmas. I was going to say Christmas. Distillery36.com is their website. Mm-hmm. Go check them out. I know they're on the social medias, the Facebook and Instagrams as well. And give them some love because we love them.
Absolutely.
So, like we said, today on the podcast is our live recording from the Domestic Violence Uncensored panel we did. I want to play that now. Anything more you want to add, Chrissy, before we get into this?
I do think we should mention that this maybe possibly trigger warning. If you've been in an abusive situation.
It was for me.
It was for me too.
I mean,
we both got triggered.
I shed a few tears.
Yeah, me too.
In the recording. There
was some crying. So I just in case anyone is sensitive to real stories of domestic violence.
And I want to mention, I wasn't going to mention this, Chrissy, just because I don't like to put notice on things. But these weren't our typical microphones that we used and all that. So it's some audio equipment that we weren't typically used to using.
Right.
So it's a little different, the recording. We were aware of that. We ran into some microphone problems, but the show must go on.
Exactly.
It came out. Again, thank you for everybody that attended. We met a lot of really great people there. We got some great photos. We're going to try to eventually get all those up at iamsaltlake.com /248. That's this episode. Again, share this episode. Feel free to share this episode with your family and friends and on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. No matter who you are and where you are, this is an important thing to share, important information.
So with that being said, let's jump into that live recording, Chrissy. Hey, thanks everybody for listening.
So this session, take the opportunity to get up to the Capitol Hill, be in the gallery, share your voice. I'm up there every year, semi-lobbying, but I pay attention. So pay attention to what's going to be up this year and know what's happening in your community and use your voice to make a change. I'm going to turn the time over now to our host from I Am Salt Lake. This is Chris Hollifield and Chrissy Shelley. They're going to go ahead and lead us through this beautiful event.
Awesome. I'm going to give this microphone back to Heather. And I got a microphone here, a little lapel here. So first of all, I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight, and spending your Friday with us. Sounds like I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I don't know which microphone is getting feedback.
I don't know either.
Is there? Okay, well, I guess we can get going. I want to welcome everybody out tonight to a very special I Am Salt Lake Live podcast recording. I'm Chris Hollifield.
And I'm Chrissy Shelley. Tonight we're going to have an open and honest discussion about domestic violence. We'd like to thank Amora Freeman of I Am Change for co-hosting this event with us. And a big thank you to Radical Hospitality and Brian King for sponsoring this event. This evening is being recorded for a podcast that will be released on a later date at iamsaltlake.com. So try to keep chatter to a minimum if you can. If you have any questions, make a note. We'll try to open up at the end of the discussion for audience questions.
October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month. But for victims in these situations, this is every day of their lives. Every minute, about 20 people are physically abused by an intimate partner in the U.S. 1 out of every 3 women are victims of domestic violence, and they are not the only ones. Men and children can also be victims. We are here to discuss real stories, real situations. This epidemic thrives on silence. Tonight we are breaking that silence. we'd like to introduce our panel members with us tonight.
Justin Boardman has been in law enforcement for just over 13 years, all with the West Valley City Police Department in Utah. During these years, he has had a very diverse career. His first 8 years were spent as a patrol officer, and for the past 5 years, he has been assigned to the investigations section. He now presents for a large variety of organizations and sits on the board of directors for the Rape Recovery Center and the Utah Coalition Against Sexual Assault. Presently, he has implemented a new interview technique using the neurobiology of trauma for the adult victims of sexual assault in West Valley City.
Hildegard Koenig immigrated to Utah 25 years ago from Venezuela and has resided in Salt Lake City for over 13 years. She has over a decade of experience working with undeserved communities in the area of women's rights, advocacy, and education. Hildegard has worked for YWCA of Salt Lake City, Utah Domestic Violence Coalition, and Planned Parenthood Association of Utah.
Brandy Farmer is a recognized leader in Utah regarding domestic violence prevention education and has developed individual curriculum to educate faith leaders, law enforcement, healthcare providers, journalists, business and professional leaders, and general populations. Brandy's relentless efforts, dedication, and inspiration have resulted in bettering the plight of victims. She has been the recipient of countless accolades and awards.
Heather Smith-Woolsey is a survivor of domestic violence and a loving mother of 6 beautiful children. She works at the Daily Herald as marketing director and digital sales manager. In her spare time, she advocates for changes in domestic violence law and uses her story to empower victims to get help.
Okay.
So so that's our panel. Can you guys hear me? Is this microphone even on? Okay.
So we want to start tonight by asking how domestic violence has affected your lives. Feel free to share as much or as little as you're comfortable with.
Your microphone just went on.
Hello? Oh, we're having technical difficulties. Let's start with Heather. Are you comfortable starting?
Sure.
Okay. So, how has domestic violence affected your? I mean, I think we all. You're very prominent right now.
Yes.
In the media because of your situation.
I lived a very hard life. I've cried a lot of tears. I especially, my heart breaks for my children and what they've gone through. I don't have any regrets, though. I just want to make that clear. Everything I've gone through has made me the person I am today, and I'm better for it. I don't like that I went through it, but sorry.
You're fine.
I'm sorry. You want to share, Brandy?
Yes. Well, today I'm going to say for the positive and for the better, because it has given me the opportunity to be able to educate from the inside out. It is when someone has asked me to teach a curriculum, it's really important who do we learn from if we don't learn from the victims and the survivors? And so I think it's, even though I think when I broke the silence, it was a day when I had asked my husband for a divorce. And instead of, what he did is he went into his office, which was in our home. He pulled a gun out, and he didn't come towards me. He went into my 9-month-old daughter's bedroom and put a gun to her head and said, "Now tell me that you leave me and I'll blow her brains off, and then mine. Then yours and then mine." And all I could think of was my son coming home from school and having that whole scene affect him for the rest of his life. I fell at his feet, and for a year and a half, I was with him for 7 years, but for a year and a half, if he said jump, I jumped. And it was that moment that made me realize that I needed help. And that's when I broke the silence, and called the YWCA for the first time. I didn't call the police yet. It took a while for me to do that.
Domestic violence, I've been as a survivor. I faced every day as a reminder because I have a disability due to my abuse. And so every day is a challenge even to wake up or to go in day by day. So I have to think about it every day in my life. But as an advocate, it is something that has given me the strength to be able to advocate and give voice to those who's been silenced. But it's something that I kind of will say the same thing. I would not change because it makes me who I am now. But at the same time, it just it's something that doesn't go away. Even after 19 years since I left, it's still something that I have to view, and it's something I fight with every day. But it makes me who I am, and I wouldn't change it because I have met wonderful people, and I've been able to help those that, like I said, have been silenced. So, thank you.
Do you want to share, Justin?
Happy to. There we go. So, personally, I have not been a victim or a survivor of domestic violence. Certainly a bad first marriage, but we'll move away from that. However, all of us in some way or another have been victimized by domestic violence, whether you realize it or not. We have. In my role, which started back in 2002, domestic violence, or DV if you will in my world, is something that we heard about or we saw on TV. We saw the homicides, we saw that sort of stuff that happened on TV. As a patrol officer in a very active city, if you will, which is West Valley, we go to tremendous amounts of volumes of domestic violence. And that's where my victimization started. Seeing and responding to the scenes of these crimes are, in some cases, mind-numbingly violent. In some cases, just yelling and screaming. Sometimes just things breaking. But most of the time, almost all the time, there are kids present, which that makes, well, in a horrible way, that's job security for me. These type of crimes are passed along, and when the children see it, they learn it, and it goes generation to generation to generation unless it stops, and it's a scourge. It's so many things would be solved in this world without domestic violence, from substance abuse to continued violence to kids going out and trying to figure out and find their family and end up in violent street gangs, if you will. That's part of the domestic violence stuff that we're seeing out there. And I'm sure throughout the evening we'll share different stories about or I'll get an opportunity to share about things that I have seen firsthand out there as well. And we'll just get back.
Can I just say one thing about what Justin said? It's very true that domestic violence is a learned behavior. It's usually passed on generationally. I know, looking back and trying to understand what had happened to me, I can see elements of emotional and verbal abuse that my abuser learned. And when I got married and we started our own household, those same things happened in my household. He just amplified everything that he did. And, he added in the element of very physical violence to it, which made it harder, but it was definitely learned. It was a pattern of behavior that he learned how to run a household and how to control a household. So it's important that people, my children, these young children growing up, going to school before they get married, they learn the signs of abuse and they start to understand what red flags are so they can avoid being a Heather, because there are signs there and you can learn to recognize them.
Yeah. I apologize.
What keeps you motivated to do what you do? Because I'm sure reliving it, rehashing it, it gets exhausting. What keeps, I don't know if anyone...
So I'm driven by my children. Not only do I want them to grow up happy and healthy, they have a lot of healing to do, and I'm in charge of that as a mother. And so my burden's very heavy, but I also don't want to pass this world on to them. I refuse to hand off this world to them in the state it's in. Things have got to change. There's no way we can keep going down this road and expect to keep a civilized society. I mean, domestic violence, it affects everybody. There's nobody that's not touched by this. So I believe it can be changed. I have the utmost faith that we can change this. And when we hand off this world to the next generation, it will be better and it will be more beautiful. It's going to be sparkly.
For me, it's the deaths. For many years, I wrote the domestic violence-related death report for the state of Utah. And every time that sometimes I would feel like, I don't want to do this anymore. I've been doing domestic violence prevention for over 30 years. But when there was a death, I had to get into the lives of the incident. I would read up to from 1 to 50 stories about the incident, and I would get into their lives, into their sadness, into their tragedy, their story, what happened in that incident. And so I would read all of them, put it away, go take care of myself for a couple of days, and then come back and write a synopsis about each one of those incidences. So every time that a death occurred, I felt like, even from the very beginning when I was at the shelter, I made a promise to myself that I would do anything that I could to help victims. And so I've dedicated my life to that. And so when a death happens, I feel more impassioned to continue to do, like today, I did dating violence prevention education at a crime prevention conference and taught relationship skills. Tomorrow I'm teaching faith leaders about their responsibility and their roles in creating a safe haven. So it is they're the deaths, and of course my family and my friends.
For me, first of all, I left because of my children. I one day I knew I was going to get out in a body bag, and so I knew that I needed to leave because I didn't want my children not to have me, and because I was the only one that was protecting them at that time. And so so I left, but I promised myself too that I was going to go ahead and help victims, because when I was seeking for help, I didn't know anything. I was an immigrant. I was learning English. Well, I knew English, but I was able, I didn't know the resources. I was afraid of the threats that he had used against me. And so I said to myself, I wanted to help. And now all this, my life has been, when someone that has been a survivor or victim, however they like to identify, comes to me and says, thank you, you changed my life, you helped me, you guide me. That's what I do every day. And it's okay when I can't get up days or I have a hard time, because I have a feeding tube because of that. And when I can't eat and I see people eating and I have those down days, I just think about like the people that I'm able to help, right? And who am I changing? And I'm happily remarried, but I told my husband, I said, I just want to change one person's life. That's all I want. And then, and maybe it's been more than one person now at this point in my life. But I think it's just, thank you. But I think it's like that person matters. Everyone. And we don't know until, so many of us know someone goes through that. So I that's what it keeps me going. No matter what I am, I will continue fighting. So it doesn't happen what happened to me.
You want to share anything on that, John?
Happily. Do you need this for the podcast? Or me talking loud is okay?
Probably the closer to the microphone so it can get into the audio.
I was just seeing if I could
get away with it.
No worries. Okay, so for me, the reason why I keep doing it is certainly change, and advocating for change. It's also certainly for going out and talking to the victims. It's also in hopes that the system is going to take care of my suspects as well, which it has a very hard time there. It's hoping to change culture within my job description. So police officers throughout the United States have been through an enormous amount of training. We train all the time. We don't train on some specific sort of things when it comes to domestic violence and sexual violence. And so that's kind of where my platform has come. But what keeps me going, personally, is at the end of an adjudication process, when the perpetrator is being punished, and when my survivor stands up in front of the judge and tells her story in open court in front of the perpetrator and gets justice, there isn't anything quite like that. If you've been working that case, I just reached 10,000 steps. Anyway, so there's nothing quite like having that adjudication. It builds you to keep on pushing forward. But also seeing culture change within police departments. We don't go out to investigate these cases and do a bad job. We don't go to work every day to shoot someone, although some people may think that. We don't. We're going out risking our lives to help other people improve theirs. But there's some culture that does need to change or actually be understood. And that's what I'm out there trying to do, because if I change culture or help change culture in police work, it's going to improve the process of police work when we respond to the scenes.
That's a good answer. Okay, I have, because the common thread, and I think among all women, sorry, you have kids too, but is that you guys all have had to deal with this while being a mother. And how hard is it, and what do you do when your kids want to know what's going on? I mean, how do you explain things to them, and how do you make them feel safe?
Well, for a long time, I was able to hide it from my kids. So I'm really good at hiding bruises. I can really use makeup super well. Just saying, it's a skill. So for a long part of marriage, they didn't understand what was going on. They knew we would fight, but they didn't understand the violence that was behind it. It was always hidden. Towards the end, honestly, I couldn't hide it. I couldn't control what was going on. I couldn't leave with them. I wouldn't leave without them. And they just became numb to it. They would all go hang out in their rooms. They would just walk away when it started yelling, because they knew where it was going. And there was nothing they could do to stop it. And it's one of the most heartbreaking things to walk in and see 6 children in the corner of a room. But there was nothing I could do. I survived. I stayed alive. I'm here now.
And you got them out.
I did get them out, and that's a story in itself.
That's incredible. Yeah. That is the most amazing thing a mother can do, is really figure out how to get her kids out safely.
That was, honestly, I've made a lot of hard decisions in my life, but that was the hardest decision in my life, because at that point, it was hourly beatings. He had a really good job, and he convinced his boss that he could work from home. So it was there, and it was real. And I knew I was going to die. He'd promised for a long time he would kill me if I left, and I came to the point that I knew I would be dead if I stayed. And I ran away. I ran away with nothing. And I actually ended up walking into social services. And I said, hey, I've got 6 kids, and they're in danger, and I can't protect them, and I'm signing them all over to you under the terms that you keep them together, you put them in a safe home, you make sure that they get the things that they need, and I'm coming back for them. This is not an abandonment. This is saving my children. And they came a few hours later, and they took them all. It took me a year to get them back. I worked through the state of New York and the state of Utah, and a year later, almost to the date, I got full custody and all of his rights were terminated. We weren't even divorced yet, but it was a huge victory, and my kids are mine now, and we're working through it, but we will go to any length to save your children, honestly.
It was impossible for me to hide it from my children because they were victims also. And my son was an adolescent at the time. Well, he grew up with it. And it wasn't until I used to beg my son to not help me because he was born with hemophilia and epilepsy and diabetes. And I would just say, please don't help me. You stay, or you would, we always left the garage door open so that he could grab his little sister and walk out the door. And because I was afraid that when he was 5 years old, he bumped heads with another child in the playground and ended up having 4 brain operations and reconstructive surgery because of it. And when you say, it's generational, he made a choice not to be an abuser. He made a promise to himself that because of what happened to me, that he was not going to be an abuser, that he was not going to use his words, his body, or his hands to hurt someone. And he was one of those that always walked away when there was a joke about a woman or by anyone, no matter what it was, and he would either walk away or he'd say, that's unacceptable behavior. And then if they didn't stop, then he would walk away. And it wasn't until I left several times, but I always went back because he always threatened. But I wanted to save their lives. I stayed because I wanted to save their lives, and I left because I wanted to save their lives. I got to the point where I thought, we're actually safer living on the streets than we are coming into the door of our own home. And when I left for the last time, I was actually excited about living on the streets with my children. But fortunately, I didn't have to.
With me, they were little enough that they didn't see, but even my little one was, I left when my youngest was 2 months old, and my oldest was 17 months old. And but I was seeing already with my little one, instead of giving me a kiss, like when you're teaching him, he would come and smack me in the face, because that's what he was learning, right? That was the way. And I knew that I had to leave, but because I protected my children and stood up again, anytime he was going to come after them, I stood in front so I would get hit instead of them being hurt. The courts gave him full visitation. And that was the hardest thing for me in the world, because he would take him every other weekend, and my kids would be screaming, not wanting to go with them and with him. And but I had to follow that. But my children, now that they're, my youngest just turned 18. I feel really old right now. They said, they're sharing that those times they were going with him, he was emotionally, psychologically abusing them. But they were so afraid of, sharing, because they knew I was going through my own thing. But everything I have done in my life has been for them. And, is something, that I would do again for them. I would do anything for my children. But I've seen the pain of my children when they're sharing stories to me, and I wish someone, because my abuse started when I was dating, and I wish someone had given me education and how this was going to affect my kids in the future. And so
talk about you mentioned in dating and you wanted to recognize signs. I mean, is there signs that you would say, okay, these are signs to see some, domestic
red flags that
flags.
you now
they were,
notice.
but our society, is so much about like jealousy and love, and everyone.
If they're jealous, it means they love you.
Yeah, exactly.
If they only want you to be with
and
them
if you want
no friends.
And it was kind of like, if you want to be with me, and he pushed me away from my friends, pushed me away from my family, pushed me away, and it was like this, I just love you so much, and he lied to me, telling me that he had been abused when he was a child, and he wasn't even abused, but it was like this whole, and I raised my sisters. And I wish that, that when those signs were happening, I didn't know. And when I was good, I was too late in that relationship. I was so afraid of leaving at that point. And I wish that, I think it's so important for youth to, like, teach them about healthy relationships and, like, classes. When you start, what's healthy and what's not healthy. With every type of relationship, I think is important. But culturally, once I was in that relationship and I got married, I was raised in a way that no matter what happens in your home, if your husband's not happy, it's your fault in my culture. And I felt that everything I did I was doing something wrong. But I wish that someone had given me that when those red flags of him pushing me away from my family and all that, because it just did not affect me, but it affected my family. One of the incidents, it was a really horrifying incident. My little sister was present, and she viewed everything. And he threatened her later that he was going to commit suicide. He was going to kill her and the family. And my little sister committed suicide after that. And then my dad committed suicide after he found my little sister. And it wasn't just me, but it's like it just triggered in my family what happened to me.
I have so many questions, but I want to talk about the grooming that we go through and we don't realize what's happening. But first, Justin, I am curious, is there anything what happens when you have experiences where you go into a home where there is a domestic violence problem and there are children present?
Wow. So I can answer both those questions. You were talking about grooming, and you were talking about the other.
Perfect.
So let's go back to the grooming, then let's go back to the kids.
Okay.
Does that work?
That works for me.
All right. So grooming, I'm actually working on a class for that right now. So grooming is similar to, if you've heard the analogy of how do you boil a frog, okay? And you boil the frog, a live frog, by putting it in cold water and slowly turning up the heat over a long amount of time. So when you are grooming your girlfriend, or when you're grooming your wife, or in some cases in sexual assault and kids' child sexual abuse, is you start off slow. But you're actually very charming. I mean, when you fell in love with your husband and when you fell in love with your first husbands, they were very charming men. They would have to be. You guys are wonderful human beings. But it starts off that way. And then it starts slowly, removing obstacles for their control. So it might be your bestie that you go out and hang out with all the time, right? So they might go, you know what, she's kind of a jerk. I don't want her around anymore. And she dresses funny. Things like that. And eventually those support systems where you had support to go to are gone. And then we start safety things. They're going to start withdrawing you from your family, okay? So then, you know what? My mother-in-law is a jerk. I don't want her around anymore. And you know what? I don't want you talking to her because all she does is rile you up and piss you off, right? So then she's like, oh, okay, I might be able to see that. And eventually, those support systems are gone. And it leaves you by yourself. Now, in Brandy's case, being such a strong woman that she is, she was able to leave that situation and not have a lot of those traits passed on, which is very incredible and is also rare. What will happen I'm ADHD, I just kind of shoot off in places. So that's amazing. But once you're in a relationship with a violent human being, that becomes a little bit normal, right? So you're used to that. Now, if you try to leave once and he hunts you down and finds you, and you get a good beating and dragged back home, you don't want to go through that again. Also, that's pretty scary. At least at home, you can make that better, and you know he's not going to be jumping out of some car somewhere in another city and getting you. You know where he's at. So they have a harder time leaving those situations because they know where their abuser is at. You know where he's at. And I'm using he because for the statistics, most perpetrators are male in this, which in turn makes this a male issue. This is a male issue. This is one that I need to help take care of, you need to take care of, and you guys need to help take care of, even you. And we need to do this as a male group. It is certainly a male issue. So now, back to the kids. So going out in enforcing these laws, we do have some good laws out there. It's called domestic violence, child abuse in front of a child. So something like that. Anyway, they come in different ranks. But if there's a child within the house, we can charge those additional crimes. So if there's 5 kids, those are 5 charges. If they're Class B misdemeanors, if the assault is a Class B misdemeanor, which let's say a black eye, that's a Class B misdemeanor. And worse, if it makes it to felony level, goodness forbid if there's strangulation involved, each one of those child abuses are now felonies. And
I have a question about let's get conversational. You don't have to, like, as long as we don't talk over each other, which I just did. But you reminded me. So beating your wife in front of your kids, giving her a black eye.
Absolutely.
That's a misdemeanor.
Yes.
Beating a dog is a felony.
Yes.
So
how does that work?
What? Why?
It works at the legislature. That's where it works.
People are very passionate about their pets.
Yes.
I mean, yes, that's great.
Oh, I'll tell you what happens is that there's not enough of us that are out there. I've been at the lobbying at the legislature for over 30 years now. And it is, one of the things that happens is that there's not enough support for domestic violence. There's a lot of support for perpetrators. We want to protect perpetrators' guns. We want to protect them because a lot of them have the feeling that victims are lying and that they're trying to put, their husbands in jail. That is what the majority of the legislators feel and believe there. And so there's not enough. Okay, so when that happened with the animal abuse and it came to a felony, it's because all the animal rights people came together. It was during an interim session, and they came together and they lobbied and they rallied and they demanded that the people that are doing domestic violence lobbying are not as strong. We're working. We can't get there all the time. I've spent every year up there, but I can't be there every single day. And so, but that's why that happens. And they were there when there was a bill on the Hill that was if you post it's the revenge porn bill that was on the Hill a couple of years ago, and I testified on that bill. It was going to be a felony if someone posted his or her girlfriend's naked picture on Facebook or something. But I got a call from one of the legislators and said, "Brandy, why does it have to be a felony?" And I said, "Because you heard me testify. Because the victims are killing themselves, they're committing suicide, they're becoming prostitutes because they don't feel like they're worthy enough, And I said, but if you have to use it as a bargaining tool in order to get it passed, make it a misdemeanor. And that's what happened. It became a misdemeanor, and that's what happens. It depends on, who has the stronger voice at the legislature. Yeah. You know that, Brian. Well, and Angela. So.
I wonder if so many women actually feel that way. Like, we're kind of taught growing up culturally that if something bad happens to us, we're bad, or we're used, or we have no value left. And so many of us can't stand up for ourselves after something. Sorry. It's so hard to stand up for yourself after something happens to you. And I think everyone's just afraid. And if everyone who things have happened to could find everyone else, if we would just talk about it, I believe there would be so much support for that.
There's still a lot of stigma. And embarrassment and shame, and that's one of the reasons. And a lot of the times, you have to respect survivors that they want to move on with their lives. I decided I couldn't. I decided that I had to fight, and I will fight to my death. I put myself in danger several times. I will leave. One time a victim called me from West Jordan, and she said he fell down the stairs. He called the police. I am going to... he says that I pushed him down the stairs. I left my lawnmower in the middle of the lawn and drove from Holiday to West Jordan because I didn't want her to go to jail. I wanted the police to know that she was the victim. I had been talking to her. And so, yes, we do need to stand up together and fight. And what's happening around our country right now, we need to stand up and say, we need to be respected. It's taken us thousands of years to get to this point where women are now, it's like respected, and we have a voice, and we cannot and will not go backwards.
And I'd just like to add to both of these points, not only what Brandy said, but Justin said. In regards to maybe it's a men's issue, you guys need to fix it. Great. Well, women also have issues too. There is no shame in what happened to me. I have no shame. I didn't do it. I survived an impossible situation, and I'm standing here today, and I love myself. And I'm going to do everything I can to make sure my children have a great life and they don't have repercussions from this. There is no shame to being abused. We do the best we can with what we know. When we know better, we do better, and we move on. We learn, and we don't put ourselves in those situations again. I think it is so important that any victim knows that there's no shame. Speak up. Speak your truth. Stand in your truth. Be brave in it. I'm here for you. All these people are here for you. When I went public, just so you know, I went very public this June. I work in the business community down in Utah County, and the majority of people I worked with had no idea what I'd been through. They had no idea, and they were absolutely shocked that they saw every day at their chamber events and saying hi to them and telling them really stupid jokes and stuff, right? That I had gone through this horrible thing and that I could still hold my head high. And I say to them, I'm awesome for going through this horrible thing because I survived it and I did it. And not only did I get out, but I got my children out, and we're on a better path. Yeah. It's not a thing to be ashamed of.
It's not. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to agree with that. A lot of times there it is, that fear. I think it is not shame, but it's fear. When I have worked with victims in the past, they have told me, if he knows that I'm talking to you, I don't want him to come after you. And I had perpetrators that have threatened my life. I've been in grocery stores with my husband and my kids, and people was like, "That's the lady," screaming at me. And I will continue doing it because of the same thing. The day I'm gone is the day, and I'll continue having a voice somehow. Figure me out. I don't know. We'll figure. But but it's something that people always look at me and they go, that happened to you? You're always so happy. Because I'm alive. Because I'm still here. Because I have met the most amazing people, and I have a life that I enjoy. Yes, I struggle, but that makes me who I am. But I wouldn't change it again. So.
And Heather and I were just talking earlier, and we both agree, I'm sure you guys agree with us, you can either laugh or you can cry. Those are your two options.
And one of the things that I know that a lot of times, because I've been there, for so many years, I've walked in coalition meetings, I've walked in, so many different kinds of meetings to fight for domestic violence prevention, and I know that sometimes when I walk in the room, they say, "Oh no, there she comes again." And I go, "I don't care. I'm not here for you to like me.
Yeah.
I'm not here for me. I am here for the victims, and that's what motivates me, the victims. And that, because I want to save lives."
So these ladies up here are amazing. In my world, we don't meet amazing ladies like this very often. That we meet amazing ladies in a different capacity. Let me rephrase that a little bit. But not those that have come to this part in their lives. This is something that repeats itself a lot. It's rare to see amazing people up here like this. In my world, I'm going to sometimes the same victim, but now a new abuser. So this is normal. When our kids are witnessing this, it becomes normal to them. They attract and are attracted to people, as weird as it might sound. You might be attracted to somebody that's similar to your mother or similar to your father in different sort of ways. And so they're attracted to that sort of personality trait, if you will. And that continues the cycle. But then once somebody is able to break free, a lot of times they will enter the same type of relationship. And I'm out at their apartment again. They may have gotten possession of the apartment, but now they have a new abuser. And what that's like as a first responder, well, it's frustrating, right? You've been out there before. You've taken her last abuser to jail a couple times, and now she's repeating the cycle. It's frustrating, but it's normal. And in my field, what that does is it jades us. And we get jaded, and we don't see the cycle or understand it. We don't understand she's surviving the best that she can, and not to judge that person. And that's where some of this culture needs to change. It's very hard to do so because we're there all the time, risking our lives to save that person. It gets frustrating. And in the past, it's the same with sexual types of violence as well, is we get frustrated responding to those type of crimes. But in the training is where a lot of things need to change. I've contributed to this. I'm not an innocent person in all this. I've been the police officer out there that's gone, why the heck haven't you left yet? I've done that. I've done other things out on the road where I've booked the wrong person in jail before. There's guilt in that. As I learn the psychology and better trained than when I was out on the road, I realize, oh hell, I did something bad. It wasn't on purpose by any means. But that happens. And if you put the wrong person in jail, I have a survivor that I've been meeting with this week. 8 years ago, she was in a struggle over a knife. He was threatening to kill himself. In that struggle, she nicked his lip when he got rid of it, the knife. The officers came on scene, were trained predominant aggressor, looked for injuries. Well, he was bleeding, not her, so she went to jail. She didn't call for help. I listened to a tape last week where he was going out to the garage to blow his brains out, and she didn't want to call the police because she's scared of him, right? She wanted to get him mental help, so she went out there with the phone and went, click, and he saw that. So he turned around, and she ran in the house, hit record, and hid the phone. So I listened to 5 minutes of her being strangled unconscious twice, being smacked around, him screaming at her that, do you want to die in front of the kids? And the kids in the background, running around him. That's what happens when we respond and we're not trained in a proper fashion. Mm-hmm. There's my soapbox.
I got the time signal, so you wanted to.
Oh, I just wanted to say that when I educate faith leaders, faithfully, but law enforcement. But I also go on ride-alongs, and I've had law enforcement say, Brandy, why should I arrest him? She's just going to go back. And I say, because it's your job, because you took an oath and to serve and protect. And if you don't like your job, you better get a different job.
And can I just add one thing to that? I know you're on a time crunch, but to what you're saying, yes, our police officers need better training. I don't think they mean any harm, but they can do much better. As for women going back, it's going to take strong women like us saying no more and showing them the path, and they can choose to follow or not, but it really is an education process. When it comes to breaking the cycle of children that have grown up in this, we really need to be doing a better job. We need to be reaching out in our schools at a very young age. We have a great anti-bullying program that's in place in every school. Why aren't we teaching healthy relationships? Domestic violence is just bullying. It's grown-up bullying. It's a joke. Why aren't we going in there and expanding these programs and saying, hey, it's not okay to hit each other. You guys can actually talk and communicate. Sometimes simple, like little things like that, kids don't even know it. They've never seen it. And they're like, what? We can actually talk it out? Yeah, you can. We need to be doing these things. You know, we can do better, and we will do better, won't we?
Damn straight.
One of the things, how I teach the program is I don't stand up there and lecture because, I'm an old lady and these are kids. But what I do is I play a video. While the video is playing, I pull about 3 couples out in the hallway, teach them some dating violence scenarios. They come back and they act out these scenarios, and then I process it with the audience and say, what do you see in this relationship that's abusive? After they process that, then I ask them, how do we turn this into a healthy relationship? Then they get to all read their dating rights, and we talk about healthy relationships. They ask questions about what is love and what is infatuation. It's amazing. They really open their mouths, but it's great to see their little minds, being educated about healthy relationships.
Excuse me. Like I said, I got the time signal, so we kind of have to wrap this up. I wanted to open it up to questions or comments or anything. I don't know if anybody has a...
We got 10 minutes.
Do we have a few minutes? If anybody has anything they want to chime in or say, I'd love to... let me get this microphone on here. There we go. Check. There we go.
Hi. There was just a few points I wanted to touch on. Okay.
Yeah, they don't think...
You gotta stick it real close to your face.
They don't sound like they're on. I wanted to emphasize how important it is for... I myself am a survivor of both sexual and physical violence. How important it is for us to also look in ourselves for the inner change that we need to do when we're taking inventory. Because, like he says, the repeat relationships of abuse aren't on our past abusers. They're on us to change internally. The things that I see are law enforcement having little power over prosecution of cases, which also re-victimizes people and survivors. From what I understand, what I read last on sexual violence, Utah prosecutes less than 2% that are presented to them. So you can comment, absolutely.
Oh, yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. There was a study in Salt Lake County.
Yes.
That went over about 12 years worth of data on sexual violence on kits that we collected. So if somebody came to the hospital and got a sexual assault kit, those are ones that are reported within 5 days. Most of the time, sexual assault in nature is late report. They went through the Salt Lake County prosecutions, did some formula stuff that's been vetted by people much smarter than me, and came up with 6% in Salt Lake County of prosecution, okay, of cases that got brought to them. Now, Missoula, if you read that book or seen the book by John Krakauer, Missoula got a DOJ investigation at 4%. So in seeing those numbers, I was very lucky to have a very supportive police chief. We started doing some different sort of trainings and different sort of interview and some policy tweaks, and brought that up in a year to 24% in 1 year. It can be done. Some things have to be changed to do so. And it's a big culture change. It's very huge, and some statute change.
Can I just mention one thing?
Please.
Can you get the microphone just for the recording?
I just want to mention one thing. This last session, I worked with UCASA, and we asked for, and Brian was on this appropriations committee, we asked for $1.5 million for sexual violence preventative education funding, and everyone kind of like, some people like, oh, whatever, Angela, you know. And I was just very persistent, and staff helped us find funding, and with the help of our, with the opposite side of the aisle. So never underestimate who's supportive of what. It depends on how, it really is about how you message it. They were able to find us, the chair of our committee, and with the help of Minority Leader Representative King and others and myself, $600,000 in one-time funding to do sexual violence preventive education. A lot of that money went to small-town Utah and to some of our tribes, because if you look at domestic violence and you look at sexual assault, Native American women are at higher risk. And we also gave some of that funding.
Almost 100%.
Yeah. And so we wanted to reach out to those areas that people tend to forget about. And so we're going to continue those efforts and doing the preventative piece. But it's really up to people here that are sitting in the audience to help us do that, because we're a part-time legislature. And I'm taking my 15-minute break right now, and so we really need all of you to kind of keep this conversation going, and for you all to put a human face. And sometimes it's a lot of responsibility we put on survivors, but it really does help when you start to put that human face on, so that people know that this happens in your neighborhood. This happens to your neighbor, and this might be even happening in your own home, and you just don't recognize it. So it's really about the prevention piece.
That's very true, and I'd just like to say to one of the points that you made, this is not a political issue per se. This is a human rights issue, and we really should be coming together as a legislature, as the Senate, as the Congress, as the entire nation, and just saying no more. There's nothing that we can't come to terms on. It's not okay to abuse. It's not okay to sexually assault. It's not okay that these things aren't being prosecuted. There's no reason why we can't find solutions and find answers to these problems, because this is a human rights issue. This is literally 1 in 3 of us going through it.
May I really quickly, I just kind of want to give a little bit of reality of what's going on in the real world right now out in West Valley City, because I have the technology. So right now, out there, you have about 14 police officers patrolling West Valley City, okay? We have 59 calls on the call screen right now. Now, related to the subject that we're talking about tonight, domestic violence, a little bit of sexual assault. Let me read you really quickly. Civil problem, there's harassment, a bunch of little follow-ups. Let's see, another harassment. We have, let's see, there's a road rage. Another civil problem.
Justin, can I add something to what you're saying? Because obviously there's a lot.
So hang on really quick.
Right.
Domestic violence, there's a dead body, there's another physical domestic, there's another domestic, and there's a jail release that we have to go let them know that they're coming out. So you have 15 officers with 59 calls.
I want any victims that are out there right now, or even will listen to this at any point in time, to understand that the police are there to help you. You need to be honest with them and tell them the truth. If you need to tell them in private, just say, hey, officer, I need to go into the next room and talk to you. They're more than happy to accommodate. They are there to be your ally in this and help you get out. I would not be here if it weren't for some very loving and kind police officers that have stepped in and really helped me unravel the mess that I was in. So if you're in this and a police officer comes to you, not just cooperate, but go out of your way to make them your ally, because they want to be your ally, don't they, Justin?
Absolutely. Yes,
Thank you.
And I was going to add to that. So, and a lot of times the cultures, a lot of times you don't want to share if the officer's a male because of what happens or that. They can ask for a victim advocate.
Absolutely.
And a victim advocate, that's their job to guide you through everything. And those, as officers, I take my hat. I have been a victim advocate, and, being able to work and being there for the victim, going through the process, and they will go through the whole process with you. It is
They will.
that we have
They're very accommodating. I was just actually out on a call the other day, and the victim advocate wasn't available. They called the next town, found a female officer, and she drove all the way over just to accommodate the victim. They're there to help you.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
we do.
Okay.
They have to have us out here by 9 o'clock. So.
Conversation offline. So I think this is more of these.
I wish we had like 5 hours because we can't even get to half the stuff.
I would like that. I think that's probably.
Let's hit these now. Wrap up.
Is this on? I am a friend of Heather's. She came forward, and I just left domestic violence, and I am taking a stand. And there's Cheryl's, there's Women of Worth, there's Uniting, because not on my watch, not anymore, because I put my cousin in prison from the time I was 3 to 7. I'm a nurse. I've taken care of everybody else but myself, and so it begins in me knowing my worth. And until I went through the Women of Worth program with Judy Gay, I didn't know. I didn't even realize what I was attracting and coming and bringing forth. And so I'm spending that year healing me, healing my son. He's thriving. We live in West Jordan. Harriman. And I know I'm a badass chick. I know I'm amazing. It manifested to where it was physically. I was lights and sirens in the hospital, in the ICU. Not on my watch.
Not on my watch either.
I won't be hid in a closet with 5 cops coming while he's charging them, swatting the gun out of their way. Those cops saved my life. And I have their back, and I'm their advocate, and they're mine. And it takes all of us, every one of us, because nobody wants this.
Yeah.
So please, I just ask everyone, join together. We all have the same heart. We're all God's children, and we're all made in His image, and He doesn't want this on His watch.
I just relate with a lot of what you're saying. I grew up in West Valley.
Oh, okay.
And I left my ex-husband 5 years ago from Sunday in 2 days. It'll be 5 years. But we met in West Valley. We lived in West Valley for a good portion of the domestic violence. So you probably know him, actually. He's pretty famous there.
I probably do.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. But I was going to comment on the police officer situation. What I've noticed, because I tried to leave him probably 30 times before I was able to. We have a young daughter also together. And a lot of the times that I did call the cops when I was getting divorced, I ended up having 30, 40 plus police reports, and that was only a fraction of the times that I called. But one of the things that I noticed with police officers who responded was it was very black and white. Either there was the few police officers who were very, very helpful and understood what was going on, or 90% of them, it would be kind of ridiculous, as you say, they're charming, and stuff like that. And my ex-husband was a big guy, and he'd be however he was before they got there. And as soon as they showed up, he'd put on his charm, sweet talk them, make me seem like I was the crazy one because I was over in the corner bawling or losing my mind because of what just happened. And all of a sudden, the police officers would go outside with him and just chatting it up and thinking like I was nuts. And that really upset me. Or, a couple times there was the police officer. Finally, one officer was great, and he actually, while that was happening with other officers outside of my ex-husband, one of them actually knew what was happening. And he's the one who came over to me, and he actually gave me some really good advice that ended up convincing me to leave a week or two later, which was if your daughter stays in this situation with you, she will grow up and have the exact same thing happen to her. And I said, no, she won't. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't understand. This has never happened to you. Don't tell me, what's going to happen. And he said, really, how would you prevent that if you can't prevent it from happening to you? And he actually had some really rude stuff, and I was very offended. But I needed to hear it, But he understood what was the dynamics of what was going on. And I told him, well, this is what I would do. If this happened to her, I would do this. I would do this. I would, I'd be homeless. I would take her and I would leave and I would do whatever I had to do. And he said, well, now you know what you have to do. And they started crying and I said, I don't want to. But, I think the few officers who know what they're doing, they can be very, very helpful. Right. I think it's unfortunate, a lot of them that don't.
Well, I think the state of Utah has taken huge steps to correct that. They are making moves towards making that better, just because I do deal with a lot of police officers too, unfortunately. With implementing the lethality assessment, anytime they go to a call, they have to stop if there's a victim, and they have to ask a certain amount of questions. If the victim answers yes to any of the top three, a victim's advocate is automatically introduced into the situation. It also forces them to stop and say, look at this history around this, something else is going on, so maybe they can hand it off to somebody that can handle it better. But the state of Utah is doing something to address that. They're forcing the officers to stop and look, and I do appreciate that and applaud the state for doing that.
One quick suggestion: if you would spend 5 minutes at some point in your busy life, if you remember that police officer's name, write a letter to him and send it.
I just remember what he looks like, but I don't know.
That's fine. If you remember the date or thereabouts, we can do that research.
Date, I think.
That will help change the culture that we're trying to change. When they know that they've actually done something right, they need to hear it.
Especially because I was one of those people, I'm sure, who you're very frustrated about. You come 50 million times and you're still there and they don't understand it and you don't understand it, but...
Yeah.
I actually had the mayor of Sandy that looked for the police officer that responded every time except for one time, but he came every time that I called. And when I speak, I usually say, this police officer was dedicated enough to respond every single time. Every time he heard that address, he came out. He's the one who convinced me that I was going to get killed, or my children were going to get killed, or that I was going to kill my husband. And so, because I was afraid that I might have to kill him in order to save my children's lives, I imagined myself in prison.
Like I said, we're out of time, unfortunately. We have to be out of the building.
We're here until 10, so they have to take down the riders.
Yeah.
So people want to have conversations outside the gallery. You're more than welcome to hang out here in this space outside of the theater and have continue to have conversations until about 9:45.
I want to thank our wonderful panel, though. There's been a lot of good things. A lot of great topics talked about tonight. Like I said, IamSaltLake.com is the website that this should be up in probably about a week. I don't know.
Sounds like you need to do part 2.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, this could have gone for 2 hours. Do you want to say something? Oh, do you want to add anything, Chrissy, before we wrap this completely up?
Oh, yeah. I'd just like to thank Radical Hospitality and I Am Change for co-hosting and supporting.
Amora and Tara.
You guys, they've done amazing work.